All right, everybody, welcome to the Point Five show of the Pennymon Doctrine podcast, which is the overflow/bonus show, where we get to talk to our guests in depth about whatever the fuck we feel like. And today, we have the honor to talk to new friend, and hopefully new friend of the show, who is the Government and World Affairs Bureau Chief for Netroots Radio, Will McLeod. What's going on, buddy?
Not much. I'm really glad to be here. And my mom did ask me the last time I saw her if I only went on programs where I was allowed to say the word fuck. So I feel like this is a continuation of that tradition.
Yep, you're definitely on another one.
Or we can pretend that you can't say it just to make Mom think it.
Cat's
but
already
you
out of the
can
bag.
just say it anyway.
Like,
no, don't do it.
Cat's out of the bag. It's a live show.
Right. It's it's live. Two, I wouldn't be able to do it when we first started. When I first relaunched the Pennymon Doctrine podcast, this is the second launch of it. So it's Pennymon Doctrine 2.0. Mm-hmm. For the first 25 episodes.
Yeah,
or
so? it was 20 something. You didn't make it to 30.
I censored myself. And so, I was talking about...
And it was terrible.
I was talking about John Boehner one day, or John Boner, and he was just doing stupid shit, and I just had to just... Fuck! And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm no more. This is uncensored show. I can't do it anymore.
I'm surprised you made it so many episodes.
You know, I thought maybe that just by hearing my voice within the first 20 episodes, I was going to get simulcast, nationally syndicated, over 500 radio stations, have multiple sponsorships, and get paid per second people listened. That's what I figured was going to happen.
Well, you know, I have a big problem with people declaring what is okay language and what is not, because I feel like I speak region neutral English. That's how I have spoken since I got teased for having an accent in middle school and elementary school. But I've spoken like this since 5th grade. This is the accent I use. I can present myself as a very sort of straight, boring person who uses a newscaster voice and talks about the problems in the world and moderates and it's boring as fuck. And I think that...
I was going to say,
I know, I was trying to...
Yeah. And the thing is, I feel like that whole thing where we're not allowed to say certain words and we're not allowed to act a certain way is a method by which real people are kept out of politics. Ordinary folks are told they're not allowed to participate, they're too profane, they say the wrong things, they do the wrong things. And we have this whole expectation built up that you will use appropriate media language and that you will do these things that you've been told you're supposed to do. And so I support in media being able to use words that, other folks think are naughty or bad or wrong for some fucking reason.
I'll say fuck. I'm working on some of the other things that I say, only because they have not that I am politically correct, which I'm far from. It's just that the word fag or faggot or anything like that has such a negative connotation and it's so offensive. Or I won't say nigger. I'll say nigga. Why? Because I can. And we took that word and for those people that don't like how it has a positive connotation now, slavery. Shut the fuck up. So
I'm gonna come out on a limb and say I won't say either of those words. I think the person who described it best was oh crap. Her Sister Act, Star Trek.
Whoopi Goldberg.
Whoopi Goldberg, yeah, where she said that those words are use at your own risk words.
Yeah, you can use it.
I won't say them either.
No, she won't. But
and
you can
because if you aren't willing to deal with the potential consequences of using that language, maybe you shouldn't use it. And it's as simple as that. It's not that these words are things that you're not allowed to say. I mean, Carlin said them and got away with them, and nobody thought his use of them was particularly racist, to my mind. At least I haven't heard that.
Because he used them in a way where that couldn't be construed that way.
Yeah.
Like, it really bugs me about how like Iggy Azalea went on Twitter and was like, "Oh, why can't white people say the N-word?" Bitch, I swear to do it. Do it. You're gonna need more than swag. You're gonna need an army. You're gonna need a Swaggy Pete army to get out alive from this one, bitch. Because no, do it. I hope you do. Eminem isn't that stupid. Okay, like, come on now. And we would let Eminem. If Eminem said nigga, we'd be like,
wait, but
okay,
Will,
yeah,
have you heard?
Eminem.
Because we were talking to our friend Ricky about this the other day, but they said it's just as offensive because I say the N-word.
Like the N-word.
Like I'll be like, I don't like the N-word. Like I won't use it as a fill-in. Like, oh, that I won't say that, but like in reference to it, it's like that word, the N-word, the one I won't say. And they're like, that's just as offensive, if not worse. And I was like, oh.
I don't know the logic
all
of that.
around.
I've heard that. I don't know the logic of it. I don't know the argument that's being used there, so I'm not equipped to talk about why some people would feel that way.
I mean, but
Although
no, not that. Just if you've heard of it, because that was the first time I heard it, and then I felt really bad. I was like, wow.
That's offensive to say that word?
Yeah.
The only person I've heard say that was Louis C.K., and he says, that offends me because now you're making me think of the word. And it was part of a comedy routine. And maybe people are serious about that. I don't actually know. All I know is Louis C.K. did a comedy routine about it.
It depends on the context. Because
the context for me would be, Molly, do you cuss? And I'll say, I say every fucking word out there. I give zero fucks. I love all the cuss words dearly. But I will not ever say the N-word.
See, that context is cool. But this is the context that would get you in trouble. You know what, John? You're an N-word.
Because I would say
all right.
that.
I'm going to have to find my sister.
I would just say, John, you're a fucking idiot.
I'm gonna have my sister do, or somebody, something, somewhere.
You'll have your sister pray for me?
Or if you use that...
Blah.
Yeah, got him.
I mean, when we're talking about like real people, there was an incident, something going on in Scotland, one of the areas I cover now, where there's a 20-year-old who's running for Parliament. She's running to be an MP, and they dug through her Twitter timeline to find every instance that she said something remotely
20-year-old-ish.
Yeah. And so she talks about a time that she'd gotten drunk and woke up the next day with more money than she'd started out with as a joke. Like, it was a joking comment that she'd made about having been drunk. Like, I think all of us had been drunk. That was basically the reaction from the Daily Record, if we're going to be hyperbolic about it. But no, they went after her for that. They went after her for comments she made about sports teams. Because, she said she didn't like a sports team, which is like me, as a Red Sox fan, saying, I really fucking hate the Yankees.
Red Sox?
You used to live in New York, I can finally say that now. I used to pretend to be a Brooklyn Dodgers fan.
Wait, you used to pretend to be a Brooklyn Dodgers fan?
I used to say they need to bring the Dodgers back to Brooklyn. That's who I'm a Dodgers fan. To get out of it, because half my family's from Florida, so Marlins Mets, other half of my family's from Massachusetts, Red Sox, Yankees. I was screwed. I had like the two rivalries there. Everyone was friendly about it, actually.
I'm an Indians fan through and through, but I mean, why would?
The point is, though, like, if I said that on Twitter, like, I fucking hate the Yankees, it wouldn't be the end of the world.
No, Will, you can't be president anymore. All right? That's crossing the line. You're crossing the line, pal.
I think New Yorkers are smart enough to figure out the difference between a comment about sports and a comment about policy. I really do.
I don't know. You can't mix them together, though. If you mix them together, that's gonna be a formula for some bad stuff. But
you know, but the point is that giving an opinion, and I don't hate the Yankees or the Mets.
I hate them both. If it's not Cleveland, get out of my face.
I mean, I root for whoever's playing the Yankees. That's my favorite team in baseball.
Okay.
But I don't hate the Yankees. I was just using that like that's the point. If I'd said that, that wouldn't disqualify me from. But they're acting like this 20-year-old shouldn't have made any comments that are, and you know, it's why we have such pathetic milquetoast politicians, because our politicians aren't allowed to have ever had opinions. And they're especially not allowed to have opinions that
they can have opinions
made strongly.
What's happening nowadays is they're having these stupid fucking opinions and then claiming that political correctness is hindering their thoughts. No, bitch, you can't talk about how it's okay to be raped. That's not an opinion. You're stupid.
Well, I'm talking mostly about Democrats here. Like, the Republicans have plenty of strong opinions that they're allowed to have. It's Democrats that aren't allowed to have opinions.
Right. And that's the unfortunate part, because you have guys like Dennis Kucinich, who used to be my representative. You got Sherrod Brown, who seems like he's been castrated the last few years. I haven't heard much of him, but you know, years ago I used to see him making the media rounds, you know, as the voice of progressives and things such as that. So it sucks that people that have, and I think that's why, like, progressive radio, progressive voices, Netroots Radio, independent media that's left-leaning, or just, actually, no, I'll take that back. The left-wing media has no voice because the politicians that represent left-wing media have no voice. And the voice that they do have is from NBC, CNN, Fox News, Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, wherever else, GE, Lockheed Martin, Norman Gunther.
It's like, you're gonna say the Gangnam Style.
Gangnam Style. Whoop, 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 whoop.
That's where I thought you were going with that.
Sorry.
It's like they've set up in the field of political debate. They've set up this little tiny fenced-in area, and that's what we're allowed to talk about. Anything in the little tiny box of pre-approved, appropriate comments. There's this giant space of subjects to talk about, like, you know, a guaranteed minimum income. Debates about that.
That's a good one.
Other progressive, the ensuring the four freedoms that were talked about by FDR, the foundations of the progressive movement, which is, you know, freedom of speech, freedom of belief, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. But those are four fundamental freedoms that every human being on this planet ought to enjoy. People should have the right to say what they want, believe what they want. They shouldn't be starving, and they shouldn't be afraid of their government or anyone else.
Oh, and people are afraid of their government.
Yeah, that's the kind of world where we should be talking about building, and we should be talking about our ideology as progressives when it comes to things like drone warfare. I'm not opposed to striking terrorist targets in general. I'm opposed to haphazardly attacking anything we think might be negative and blowing up a bunch of weddings. And I'm opposed...
Right. killing innocent women and children and going, oh, well, war and terror. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know, man. You know, collateral damage, that's going to happen.
They shouldn't have been brown by our bombs. They look like terrorists. They come from terrorists, man.
If they'd been white, this wouldn't have happened. They should have just been born white. That would have
all they had to do was
this problem from happening.
All along here.
Although, you know, one of the things that, you know, hurts conservatives' brains is that technically a lot of people in the Middle East are white. Iran comes from the root word of Iran is Aryan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is true. And that is when Malcolm X figured that out. He was like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
My own
he went to the Middle
like,
East. He went to the Middle East and saw a bunch of white folks calling him brother and treating him just fine. And he was like, whoa.
So you follow Allah too? Yes, my brother.
And this is where it all started. Basically, no.
I pictured one of the, like, looking at it, like, make sure it's really real.
No.
I just always remember that story where that kid walked up and licked you because thought you smelled like you were gonna taste like chocolate.
When was that?
When you were a kid.
Oh yeah. I was like, that happened as an adult?
No.
Remember that happened when I was a kid?
You were that drunk.
Shit used to happen to me all the time.
You know, this could be wrong of me.
Oh, you're not chocolate. Sorry.
There's a part of me that this could be wrong, and I should probably not wish for this, but there's a part of me that wants to see the Wayans Brothers do Malcolm X Goes to Mecca.
Man, Key and Peele need to do Malcolm X Go to Mecca.
Yes, no, that would actually be good. That would actually be good.
I mean, anybody just trying to be that should be a contest.
Who could make the best Malcolm X Going to Mecca sketch for $1,000 or $10,000? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Key and Peele are awesome. The reason I said the Wayans Brothers is because they're terrible, and I would be enjoying how terrible it was.
Yeah, they're terribly hilarious.
Yes.
To make it make sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you were talking about you made mention of some of the big topics that we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah.
And you talked about Scotland, and for those that don't know, go ahead and explain your Scottish roots and what makes you so intrigued about Scotland.
Yes, so you and I had this conversation earlier, and it's I was asked when John and I talked earlier, like, what got me interested, and the whole thing was every American will someday ask themselves, if they think about history, why am I here? Why did my ancestors come here? And I am largely of Scottish ancestry. I mean, I've got McLeod on my dad's side, and there's Smith and Douglas on my mother's side. There's all these stories about privateers at Nova Scotia and all of that. And, you know, I realized, you know, listening to these stories, that it was because essentially we couldn't live in Scotland anymore for economic reasons. And for some of them, it's because they got cleared off their land and transported to North America against their will as indentured servants in a process of ethnic cleansing called the Highland Clearances. That this is what happened. And I realized reading all of this stuff, which is way far in the past, that I didn't actually know why Scotland was part of the United Kingdom and not an independent country. Because I remember, you know, my level of education in Scotland, I was like, see Braveheart, and kind of knew that Scotland was independent and fought a war about independence, and then ended up part of Great Britain, and its flag was on the flag. And I did grow up with this kind of, you know, sense of being, you know, both Scottish and British and have English heritage and all that too, and, you know, watching the BBC and eating British food and stuff like that. And I started reading Scottish history, and things were really, really, really terrible. And I kept, it started with Darien and Scotland trying to have a colony and them getting screwed over by financiers, but also screwing themselves over by bringing a bunch of wool clothing to try to settle in Panama, in an area so deadly to humans because of malaria that it was uninhabited at the time. Even the native folks didn't want to live there because it was a swamp and you would die. So a bunch of people from a very cold climate go there and they all die. And then they try to get supplies from local English colonies in the Caribbean, and they say, no, we're not going to sell you. So it started there. Then you have the Union of the Crowns, and I'm sure you've heard the Glorious Revolution. It was this bloodless revolution. Well, it involved a civil war in Ireland and Scotland, so it wasn't bloodless at all. And then it moved forward, and you have rebellions, and you have, first you have the Act of Union, where the Scottish government was bought out by English financiers, essentially, to the tune of, in today's money, I think it would be about £350 billion being paid directly to private interests in Scotland and to Parliament to get them to vote for the Union. There were riots in Glasgow and Edinburgh.
Oh, so they're not corrupt at all.
Oh no, they was completely corrupt, and and still is. If you look at London, there are pedophiles everywhere and expenses scandals. And they were having so many scandals over the stuff they were buying on the taxpayers' dime that they shredded the records of what people had bought, so that we'll never know like what was happening was British politicians have an expense account. Like, how if you work for a fancy schmancy company, you get an expense credit card,
right?
Where you can just like rooms and rides and whatever. Well, these people were spending stuff like ridiculous. Tories were using it to buy. All this, everyone was using it. To put it this way, the Labour Party guys were using this illicitly, were buying homes for their children. The Liberal Democrats were buying second houses for themselves. And in one case, a Tory peer bought a house for his ducks.
I mean, who
I'm not making that up.
I would buy a house for my
nobody
ducks.
got strippers or nothing? Man, I would have got like strippers. I would have got some cocaine to get some more strippers.
Well,
I'd have
George
got PlayStation
Osborne
4 up in this bitch.
Just to talk about that, George Osborne, the person who's in charge of the finances for the British state, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, has a huge cocaine problem in that he can't find enough cocaine. So, no, this is the society in London, and they took all the documents because they were required to have this on record, but nobody bothered looking. And then some journalists said, hey, or I think it was an activist group that was trying to get taxpayers' money spent well, said, while you're cutting all of these budgets and trying to privatize our healthcare, let's see what you've been spending taxpayer money on.
George, I know I can get some. I know you can fix the budget, George. Come on.
Isn't it?
God, get that cocaine, buddy. Got some strippers in the back too.
Basically. No, and and it's corrupt now. It's always been corrupt. And the thing is, I kept reading about all this horrible stuff, like we talked about ethnic cleansing, and that process, the Highland clearances, that ended in 1895. It kept going. We have photographs of it. Like, that process lasted and kept going on. I kept waiting for all the horrible crap in Scotland's history and all the stuff that kept happening to people to stop. And, we get to the 19th century and you have the Red Clydesiders being run over or threatened with tanks for arguing for the 8-hour day. You have people marching for the 8-hour day and the British government sending in tanks in Glasgow. You have all these things that kept happening. And then you have the government of Clement Attlee. And things are so bad in Scotland that a group of people get together to argue for a Home Rule amendment. They want Home Rule for Scotland. They want a Scottish Parliament. Something like 2/3 of the population in Scotland signed the document. In a country of 5 million people, like 2.8 million people signed this thing. and Clement Attlee refused to meet with them to even discuss it. And then you have the 1970s. So that was the 1950s and 60s. 1970s, Scottish oil is discovered. Scotland isn't told how much oil that they have. Scotland becomes the only nation in history to discover oil and get poorer. Because all of the money made off of that oil is spent in London. You know, there's this ring road, the M25 around London. While that was being built, these big offshore oil rigs in Scotland were blowing up. There was the Piper Alpha disaster, killed over 300 people in Scotland. So Scots are dying getting the oil out of the ocean while it's being used to build giant roadways in London. And the history keeps rolling forward. And you get to Margaret Thatcher, who did exactly to Scotland what Ronald Reagan did to the Rust Belt.
Yeah.
Thatcher, who destroyed heavy industries because she was targeting the unions of those heavy industries. She made promises.
So basically, Scotland's like the black people of the UK.
Well, there's a large Pakistani population and there's a large Caribbean population that have to deal with a lot of crap because of ethnic stuff. But yeah, in Britain, racism isn't just, you know, white folks and black folks. There's a lot of what feminists call intersectionality. And it deals even within Scotland. Like, there's bigotry going on right now over the Gaelic language, and people complaining that Gaelic even exists in certain parts of the country.
Well, they're complaining about it?
Yeah, there are people who are bigoted against Gaelic and who don't want it to exist, and who are pissed that it exists. And it's
a fucking language.
Yeah, and yeah, and it's...
I don't want you to say A like that. I want you to say A like this. If you don't,
yeah,
we're going to I don't know. I don't. Why is there such a big British Scottish divide? Like, is it really some tribal bullshit from centuries ago?
Well, no, it's not. And what it has to do with the fact was that under Clement Attlee, you had the rise of the Labour Party, and even though, you know, he was ignoring the Home Rule stuff, Scotland very much from about the 1890s with a guy named Robert Bontyne Cunningham Graham, who ran as the first socialist ever to get elected to Parliament. From his point onward, he co-founded the Scottish Labour Party with Keir Hardie. The Scottish Labour Party is now dead. It is the Labour Party in Scotland now. It calls itself Scottish Labour. R.B. Cunningham Graham went on to found the Scottish National Party later and become its first president. But ever since those guys, Scotland moved towards this international socialist ideal where borders need to be knocked down and the working class internationally needs to stand shoulder to shoulder with each other and stand up against the financiers. Now, unfortunately, in Europe, what that means is you've got races to the bottom now, where everybody's fighting against the Chinese and unions are fighting each other, and you have these huge problems. There's still a desire for social democracy and for a just society, but that old international system is dead, and all of these things that supported that system, the Ravenscraig, the giant, most efficient steel mill in history, all these things that supported the Labour Party, they're dead. They were killed by Thatcher. And so you have these people in Scotland who keep fighting for this left-wing system, and you have people like Thatcher in Britain who keep calling them socialist parasites. And when Scotland has, for the past 35 years, produced more tax money per capita than they get back in funding, giving a net sort of surplus to the UK from Scotland, the BBC spends, $100 million in Scotland and gets $300 million back. you have all these
it's
institutions.
kind of like modern day feudalism, then, huh?
Well, they do have that in the Highlands, actually. That's another
So they have,
problem.
like, kings and lords and
Yeah, they have
type
lords.
bullshit?
They have lords with tenant farmers who are still trying to chase people off of their land, whose ancestors, by and large, participated in ethnic cleansing. It's still feudalism in the Highlands. That never actually stopped.
So what is it that you want to do to make things better, personally?
I would like to see Scotland have control over its own finances, primarily. I would like actual, real home rule for Scotland, ensure that independence. Because the only reason that Scotland has so many deep-seated problems is because they haven't had the capability to solve these problems. They have voted for people promising solutions for the past 35 years. They have voted consistently for left-wing parties. They have voted consistently for a just society. They have voted consistently against, the Lords. They voted to democratize. Britain still has a House of Lords, an unelected House of Lords that is full of people with titles of nobility.
But they don't do shit.
Well, they're the upper house. They're kind of like the Senate. And, there are issues, and they don't really challenge stuff too much, because if they did, then there would be a great outcry and they would lose all of their power and privilege that they have. It's kind of like the monarchy still has a lot of technical power, but never uses it because it would mean the end of the monarchy.
True.
So basically,
what? I mean, they had that referendum vote a few months back. I mean, that was their opportunity to, be independent. Obviously, I'm not, and Molly definitely is not a buff on Scottish politics. We tried to talk about it, but it didn't really go as well as I liked. But you had the opportunity to, or they had the opportunity to get their independence, and they didn't happen. Like, what was that all about?
Well, two things happened. Number one, the older population, you remember when I was talking about that whole international socialist viewpoint?
Yeah.
Wants that, and they want a socialist Britain, and they want to stand in solidarity with the people they consider to be their brothers and sisters in the South, not realizing that that whole part of the left is dying. And so they voted no because they want to, be in solidarity with the left in England and in Wales and in Northern Ireland. Whereas young folks voted overwhelmingly yes. Especially people who were under the age of 20, they were very largely yes.
What's the voting age out there?
16.
Oh, okay.
It was in the referendum. It was lowered to 16, and it may stay there. They're trying to keep it there for Scots.
You got hair in the field? Go vote.
Basically, and that's. And that's 16-year-olds can be responsible and active participants in democracy, and this is trying to encourage that.
Well, they can fuck and drink and smoke and drive. Go vote.
My God.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But basically, you had this entire group of people, almost half the country, who got extremely fired up about building the kind of society they'd like to see. And then you had the no side, which was not actually all that enthusiastic about the Union. They just thought that maybe it was a bad idea right now.
Right, because I was seeing commercials like, oh, you've been with us for a long time, and running a country is hard by yourself, and what are you going to do about jobs? It was kind of like the argument that people have when they try to, they talk about like Texas seceding. But the difference between Texas seceding and Scotland being independent is that, like, literally 90% of Texas is subsidized by the federal government in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, you have the oil industry and all that. And you have...
Like, half the bases would be gone. NASA would be... Well, NASA's already gone, but, like, NASA would be gone, and just, yeah. Good luck, Texas.
Texas is a net... does give a net surplus in taxation. to the federal government, but that is largely because there are a ton of incredibly wealthy people who live there.
True.
Who are in the oil industry. If you take away their subsidies, if you take away NASA, it would crash.
They ain't making shit. They ain't got none.
No, they do have a lot of oil, and they would be able to build an economy if they wanted to be left-wing. Well, the thing is, if they wanted to be left-wing and actually have their government do something.
Well, we're talking about
be
Texas,
responsible.
Bro. We're talking about Texas.
I think the main point.
Oh, yeah. Ted Cruz and Louis Gohmert.
Yeah.
Ron Paul.
Just to make the final point. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. I don't want to say you're wrong, because it is Texas. But to talk about the intellectual point about this, did you ruin your mic?
My
Oh
the little bottom part of my mic stand is on the floor somewhere.
You got so excited about talking about.
I did. Texas. I was. My eyes was bulging. I was like, Will, Texas.
Yeah.
But then I lost the bottom of my mic stand. I'm listening. I have the headphones in. You go and finish your thought, and I'm going to try to fix my mic stand. Hold. I'm listening though. Go ahead.
You okay there, Molly? It's gonna be okay. Deep breaths.
This is embarrassing. I'm embarrassed.
Oh my god!
I don't think anything can happen at this moment.
Oh my god!
Now we're waiting
So
for Molly to fart.
Refocus.
I'm not
This will be complete.
Don't put this on me. I want to say you should have seen his face, but it wasn't the face. It was everything else. He's holding it.
Really?
Oh, I saw.
Go ahead and finish your thought. Because Molly's just
Rolling everywhere. Okay.
To finish the thought. Okay, so 90% of Texans don't want independence. And the thing about independence for the United States is that it has never been tried peacefully. If you look at all these secessionist groups that have always existed, it's always about, getting your guns and shooting at people. It's not about democracy. And what's kind of absurd is that if the Confederacy hadn't fired on Fort Sumter, there's the theory that maybe the U.S. would have let them go. And there were a lot of people in the North saying, let them go, war just isn't worth it, let the cotton kingdoms ruin themselves. We'll be better off without them. That was basically the point of view of the rest of the U.S., is that they can leave, let them go. And the problem is, for most of the population of the South, they didn't want to be ruled by the cotton nobility.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a significant portion of Southern Unionists.
Those guys are assholes.
Yeah, and they're still the ones running the South, by the way. Yeah, right. Saxby Chambliss and all those old family dudes, still running.
Fucking racist bitches.
Basically. What was, Rick Perry, Governor Goodhair?
Right.
As he was called.
Governor Goodhair.
That guy, I'm gonna get rid of 3 agencies of government. We're gonna get rid of education. And
yeah, I remember that.
What's the other one?
And then someone was like, there are 5.
There's 5. That was Ron Paul.
Yeah.
Oh, you won't get rid of 5 of them.
Oh my god.
But I mean, yeah, man. So.
But the ultimate point is
millennials were coming out. I don't know. Are they considered millennials in Scotland?
I don't think that word is used very much, but yeah, young folks were very much for independence and wanted to build that. The point about Texas I want to make, though, is that nobody has tried democratically to secede from the United States. Never been tried democratically before.
Well, I mean,
and there's a pathway, and this is, it would be a dumb idea, but in the case of the U.S., nobody has tried democratically to do it. Because democratically, in the U.S., Americans pretty much all want the same ultimate goal for everybody. There's that overarching idea of the American dream, but we do disagree on how to get it. That's not necessarily the case with the UK. You got people who want there to be titles of nobility and lordship and people in a higher station than other people. And that sort of view of the world is pretty strong in parts of the UK. And, you know, it even exists in parts of Scotland. But there's a fundamental values divide between Scotland that wants a social democracy styled on Norway or Sweden, and the UK that basically wants to be the US, and that thinks that what we're doing is a great thing and ought to be continued.
Right, even though we're ranked like below all of them right now currently.
Yeah, that's
like,
that's
hey, that's just like I don't know if you're into basketball, but it's like, hey, we are the Atlanta Hawks and we just had a 19-game win streak, but you know what? I want to be like the Knicks. I want to be exactly like the Knicks. Matter of fact, we're going to break up this whole team, okay, Molly? What we're going to do, right, is we're going to get guys from the D-League. We're going to get Shaq. He's going to come out of retirement. We're going to get Bill Russell. He's like 87 years old. We're going to make this super team. The super team of championship caliber. Because that's how you win championships. You build a super team. So we're going to get all the dead people who won championships in the past, necrolize them, and then we will win. That's how we'll be number one. Atlanta Hawks. And I was like, USA.
Yeah,
no, you're right. I just wanted to be a jackass for a second. Because my mic stand is fixed.
Yeah, fun's
no, that's basically like they're getting rid of their National Health Service. Rather than fixing it, they're trashing it. That's the whole thing with austerity. Rather than fixing problems, they're trashing it. They're doing things irresponsibly.
But people are getting paid off of that, aren't they?
Yeah, well, you had even in the Labour Party, you had Alistair Darling, who was getting £80,000 from going on the lecture circuit, talking to firms and hanging out with firms at dinners that were invested in the privatization of the NHS. And we saw that. We saw National Health Service.
Okay. Yeah.
I was gonna say national hockey.
No.
Stuff.
Health.
National hockey stuff. National hot shit.
Yeah. No.
But basically, here's what happened, and this is when you're talking about millennials, and this is the important thing. Yes campaign started off, got a ton of money given to it by some lottery winners who were SNP members, just given a ton of money by two ordinary folks. And the Yes campaign proceeded to waste that money, and they weren't doing a very good job. And so millennials and artists and other folks...
George, I got some cocaine. Sorry.
Leave the poor guy alone. He is not used to you.
I know. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I can just see George Osborne's eyes bugging out right now.
Right. We have cocaine? Cocaine? Strippers?
No, and like they're images of him wigging out high as hell in the House of Commons. Just like sweating and his eyes bugging out and like twitching.
As you talk about millennials.
But yeah, back to millennials. You had in Scotland, and this is what I would like to see us do here in the U.S., is you had Commonweal get set up by a cross-generational group of people. You had the Radical Independence Campaign set up by Cat Boyd and some other folks. You had Women for Independence. You had National Collective, which was this Artists for Independence group. We need to build the progressive movement like that. We need to have affinity groups. We need to have events where the affinity groups meet. We need to take over the Democratic Party. We need to teach young millennials how to take over the Democratic Party, because in the UK, parties are selected from top down. In the US, you join the local party, you get more votes into that local party by just having more members who are active. You vote for who's going to be an official candidate. It's bottom up. if you look at Syriza in Greece, that was basically the Occupy movement taking over the country through elections. Similar thing is happening with Podemos in Spain. Occupy in the U.S., we tried to run candidates in New York, and we got laughed at by the rest of the Occupy folks. Voting,
Well,
that's not going to do anything.
Here it's really all about money.
Yeah, and we could have had, if people had participated and done participatory democracy, you can beat that. Because here's the thing.
True.
The people with all these groups having these events, bringing people in, volunteering, making campaigning part of their lives in Scotland. And they didn't stop. And the Labour Party, which is like, okay, Labour Party used to get votes in Scotland like the Democratic Party got votes in New England. Labour Party is about to die because of its alliance with the Conservatives and its support of the Union and 45% of the country being mad at them, and then 10% of the country, in addition, feeling like they were lied to. Labour's about to get kicked right out of office. It would be like the Greens sweeping New England is the political earthquake that looks set to happen in May. But anyway, if we were able to, the way you get to something like that, where progressive forces take over our politics, is you get millennials active. You have them build the kind of political action groups they want to see. You have them actively involved, and then you have a roadmap for taking over the Democratic Party. Going to the local Democratic Party, getting your stuff on the agenda, getting your guys, your progressives, to win primaries, and you do that through mass politics. You do that. It's actually kind of old school. You used to have barbecues for political parties where people were invited to come out. You used to have festivals. Having that kind of action again is how we achieve, 97% voter registration like they had in Scotland and 83% turnout.
Yeah, that shit was extremely impressive when I heard the numbers. And I was gonna say, all that stuff sounds well and good, but you either need to do one, pay people, or two, have Mark Zuckerberg be there and Facebook host it, or millennials ain't gonna do shit. But with that said, what we're gonna do is we're gonna tell the YouTube people, hasta la quisha. We're gonna be out of here on the YouTube end of it. If you want to check out the rest of this interview, we're gonna be talking about video games. We're gonna be talking about GamerGate. I'm just gonna be stupid. Hopefully, I don't lose my mic stand again. We're just gonna have some. We're just gonna do our thing. We got Will McLeod here. The rest of the show is gonna be up on Saturday, so check out for that.
Check out for that.
Check. Wait, really? That's not how it goes. Huh? It's not
No.
What am I supposed to say?
Check it out on
Check
Saturday.
it out on Saturday for that. Out. Check it. Until Saturday, y'all. Until Saturday, you'll hear the rest of the show. But for now, peace.